Hi everyone, welcome to my new channel, Race to the White House Election Forecast 2024. On this channel, I'm gonna share with you my brand new independent evidence-based election forecast model on the 2024 presidential election between Vice President Kamala Harris and former President Donald Trump. The model takes in a vast array of data spanning from polls to fundamentals to voting trends and patterns, and returns a projected share of votes for each candidate as well as the associated probability of victory for each candidate both nationally and on a state level. On this video, we're going to take a look at what the national environment will look like on November the 5th according to the model, and then we're going to give a rating to each state from solid to tilt for each candidate, based on the margin of victory that is projected by the model. So, as you can see now from the final spreadsheet, the model revolves around four main pillars. The first of which is, of course, the national environment. So, what the model really does is starting by taking some raw data about the national environment. Those are called Bayesian prior, and if you're interested in a mathematical explanation. So basically, the model takes some data, for example, coming from polls, coming from other indicators like the economy, the incumbency, for example, if one of the candidates is an incumbent. And so it makes an assessment on what the national environment will look like according to this raw data. Then afterwards, we compute in other important bunch of information. For example, we have here polls, we have here polling error, we have here third-party performance, which is really important in case of a very close election, as this one seems to be, and then the big fundamentals. In the next few videos, we're going to take a look at where exactly this score is derived from. But you need to know for now that the model computes all those data, for this one that are called Bayesian posteriors. Again, it's not important that you know the math to really understand how the model works, but this is just for those of you that want to know exactly how the thing works in a pretty accurate way. And then at the end, it returns an accurate projection both nationally and on the state level for the national vote margins, the vote margins, and probabilities. Probabilities for the national vote and probabilities for state victories. So right now, our model projects that Vice President Kamala Harris has a 68.8% chance of winning the popular vote, and Donald Trump, of course, a 31.2% chance. This means that in the probability distribution that yields those results, the mean value is Harris plus 1.16. So it means that the expected value, the most likely value, and the projected popular vote margin here is Harris plus 1.16. So of course the model accounts for the projected turnout as well. Again, in the next few videos, I'm gonna tell you exactly how it does that. The projected turnout is 64.49%. It's a little decrease from 2020 when it peaked 66.6%, but as a result of 7 million more voters actually being eligible to vote, the total vote cast will actually exceed the numbers that we've seen in 2020 by around 1 million, and will have around 159 million votes. Then the share of votes that other parties are projected to receive is esteemed at 3.84%, which means that Harris is projected to receive 48.66% of the vote, and Donald Trump 47.50%. Of course, elections are decided by the Electoral College. So now let's try to fill out a 2024 presidential election map according to the margins projected by the model. So as you can see here, we have 4 categories for each candidate, from safe to tilt. Safe states are those states that are projected to vote for either candidate by margins greater than 12 points. Those states are really difficult to swap and to become competitive, even in case of a big landslide. It would take really something unexpected and unprecedented for those states to become competitive. Likely states are those states that are projected to vote with margins between 7 and 12 points. Those states are not really competitive at the moment, and it would take a landslide for them to become competitive, but in case of a really polarized national environment, with either candidate winning with big margins in popular vote, for example, margins greater than 7 points, those states could actually become competitive. The link states are the states where the margins are projected to lie between 2 and 7 points. Those are really competitive states, but right now they do show a degree of partisan leaning. Of course, they may become competitive even after minor changes, for example, post changes or even approval rating changes, so they're really at the center of the race. And then we have tilt states. Tilt states are projected to vote for either candidate by less than 2 points. Less than 2 points means an implied probability of less than 60%. Less than 60% actually means a statistical tie. So it means that even really minor changes, like for example bad weather, could actually change the outcome of the election. Those states would be rated as toss-up in a toss-up map, but in this case we are trying to be really accurate and project the actual margin, so we're gonna write them down as tilt. So let's start out with the safe Democrat category. Starting here in the West Coast, the state of Washington, Oregon, California, and Hawaii are certainly gonna vote for Democrat by big margins. There's been some speculation that the state of Oregon could end up in the likely category, as it did in the 2016 election. But with Kamala Harris replacing Joe Biden at the top of the ticket for the Democratic Party, she has seen a kind of uptick in her polls, and in this way we expect Oregon to vote safely Democrat, and our model currently gives Oregon a projected margin of Democrat plus 16, so we expect Kamala Harris to win Oregon by 16 points. Then on the East Coast, the other Democrat stronghold, we have Maine, the first congressional district of Maine, safely Democrat. Then the state of Vermont, the state of Massachusetts, Connecticut, Rhode Island. Connecticut will go down, of course, as safe Democrat. The state of Rhode Island, the Empire State, New York, the state of Delaware, the state of Maryland, and the District of Columbia. We left New Jersey blank, you may notice, we'll come to that later. Then back in Central America, the only safe state for Democrat here is the state of Colorado. Again, we left Illinois and New Mexico blank, but we'll come to that later to explain why we did so. It may be odd to see Colorado to the left of New Mexico, since really New Mexico has been a stronghold for Democrats, in particular due to its big Latino population, but really we've seen that Latino are trending Republican, as we've seen from polls and we've seen from recent exit polls even in the 2020 elections. This is mainly due to Latinos really identifying with conservative values, and it may be due to even some Republican immigration policies that have made inroads with Latino population. Colorado, on the other hand, has seen a really rapid growth in diversity and urban population, as well as a college-educated population. Indeed, for this reason, Colorado is going to vote safe for Democrats. Now let's fill out the column of safe Republican. In Central America, starting from the west, the states of Montana, Idaho, Wyoming, Utah. Then in the Great Plains region, the states of North Dakota, South Dakota, Nebraska at large, 2 electoral votes that are awarded to the winner of the popular vote in the state of Nebraska, and then the first and third congressional district, then the state of Kansas, Oklahoma. Then in the south, the states of Arkansas, Louisiana, Mississippi, Alabama, South Carolina, Tennessee. Then up in the Midwest, the states of Kentucky, Missouri, Indiana, West Virginia, and the state of Ohio and Iowa. Those were purple states back in the Obama era. They both voted for Obama with hefty margins both in 2008 and in 2020, in 2012, but as Trump came over, those states shifted heavily to the right, and Trump won them over both in 2016 and in 2020. Even in 2020, the nation shifted to the left compared to 2016. This was mainly due to Trump's bill with the blue-collar workers here in Ohio and with evangelicals here in Iowa. So those states are projected to shift even more to the right as the nation goes around 3 points to the right compared to 2020, and so we expect those states to exceed the 12 points threshold and go down as safe Republican states. So you may have noticed that we left Alaska blank. Alaska used to be a big Republican stronghold, but it has been recently trending to the left. This may be due to its diverse population, and this was seen really in the 2022 midterms, where Mary Petula defeated 2008 vice presidential Republican nominee Sarah Palin in Alaska. This may have been due to the way Alaska holds its election, which is to say, rank voting system with the first past the post, which is adopted in the majority of US districts. But of course, Alaska has been trending to the left, and this is undeniable. Of course, this does not mean that Alaska will vote blue anytime soon, but Alaska will go down as likely Republican here because it will vote by a margin of around 10.5 points in favor of Republican candidate Donald Trump. Then other two states that will go down as likely Republican are up here in the Northeast Maine 2nd Congressional District. This is a very rural, white, and not educated district up here in Maine. It's voted for Republicans both in 2016 and in 2020, and I expect it to do so in 2024. The margin here of victory expected is at around 8.35 percentage. That's around 8.35, and of course, if Kamala Harris were to win here in Maine 2nd Congressional District, I would expect the election to be a landslide in favor of the Democratic candidate. To wrap up the likely category for Republicans, we come down here in the state of Florida. The state of Florida was, of course, an eternal pauper state. It was decided by only 537 votes here in 2000 between Bush and Gore by a margin of less than 0.0%. Then it's been a very close state throughout the 2000s. Here in 2008 and 2012 were carried by Obama by very small margins, in particular in 2012. Then in 2016 it shifted heavily to the right, and in 2020 what Trump was able to do was actually to increase its margin of victory despite losing the popular vote to Joe Biden by 4.6 points. So Florida has been trending clearly to the right. This may be due to the inroads that Republican has made into Latino population, or even because of many retirees here from the South actually moving to Florida, buying houses here, and so bringing to Florida some fresh conservative votes. This may be even due to some grassroots operation from the DeSantis and the Florida GOP organization. This shift to the right was really certified in the 2022 midterms. Governor Ron DeSantis won re-election by a whopping 19.4% here and incumbent Senator Marco Rubio defeated the Democratic opponent Demings by a whopping 16.4 margin here in Florida. And also in the House race, Republicans were able to clinch 20 out of the 28 districts at stake. Florida really seemed the only state where the red wave that was really expected in 2022 that was really expected in 2022 actually materialized. So we expected to vote Republicans by a margin of around 9.5 points. Again, if Kamala Harris were to win here, or actually even come close here, I would expect a national popular vote being really skewed to vote the Democratic candidate, maybe possibly her winning the popular vote by more than 5 or 6 points and winning the Electoral College by a landslide, getting all the other swing states here in the map. Then what concerns the likely Democrat category, we have Maine popular vote right up here. The state of Maine was won by Hillary Clinton in 2016 by just a margin less than 3 points, but then it shifted heavily to the left and Biden carried it by 9.1 points. The state of Maine is, of course, one of the least Democrat states here in the New England region, but it's fundamentally Democrat, in particular with the 1st Congressional District being heavily Democrat, with being educated and very urban. Expect the state of Maine to vote for Kamala Harris with a pretty comfortable margin. And again, if Trump were to come closer here in the state of Maine, or were to win the state of Maine, I'd expect it to be a very good night for Donald Trump. Then down here in Nebraska 2nd Congressional District, we expect the district that encompasses the state of Omaha, to vote for Kamala Harris with a likely margin. Again, this is a very urban district and a very educated district. It voted for Trump in 2016 by a really narrow margin, around 2.2 points, right here, and then it shifted heavily to the left in 2020. We expect it to continue its trend as the educational gap widens in the country, and so the projected margin down here will be Kamala Harris plus 9.54. Again, if Trump were to win the city of Omaha, I'd expect him to win in a very big way, probably winning the popular vote by 3 or 4 points and the electoral college by a big margin. Then here in the northeast, we got the state of New Jersey that will go down as live Democrat, as well as the state of Illinois. There is really no way that Trump is going to win those states, barring a big landslide in the popular vote. Trump will probably need to win the popular vote by around 7 to 10 points to actually win those two states. Those are really Democrat states, and actually the margin of victory that is projected by the model in those states is respectively 11.97 in Illinois and 11.98 points in New Jersey. So really very close to the safe category. But the point here is to stress that those states are really less Democrats than all those northeastern states. So keep an eye on them even when you're talking about historic trends, and maybe in a few years those states may become more competitive. Then to wrap up the likely Democrat category, we come down here in the state of New Mexico. The state of New Mexico has a big Latino population, which has been trending to the right, and is very rural and not so educated. It is less educated than the state of Colorado, and this is one of the main reasons why we expect the trend of New Mexico voting to the right of Colorado to continue even in 2024. The projected margin here in New Mexico is at Harris plus 9.10 points, so we expect Harris to comfortably win New Mexico. Again, if Trump were to win New Mexico, we would expect him to win all those other swing states right here and down the Sun Belt, and so to win the Electoral College by a big margin. Now, heading down to the lean category, we're going to place the state of Minnesota into the lean Democrat category. The state of Minnesota is certainly the most Democrat state here in the Rust Belt region. It's the presence of Tim Walz on the ticket may even help Kamala Harris. The state of Minnesota was actually closely decided in 2016, just by less than 2 points. It shifted to the left heavily, and Biden won it by 7.1 points. But again, if you look historically, for example, at the 2018 election and 2084 election, Minnesota was the only state that Reagan lost, and that actually the Democratic candidate Mondale was able to eke out, even though by just 0.18 points. But again, it's clearly the most left-leaning state here in the upper Rust Belt region, and this is in particular due to the big urban population in the twin cities of St. Paul and Minneapolis here in the east of the state. Again, another state that we're going to rate as lean Democrat is the state of New Hampshire. The state of New Hampshire is the most Republican state here in the Northeast. Hillary Clinton got New Hampshire just by less than 1 point in 2016, as you can see here, just 0.37%, but it shifted to the left and President Biden won it by 7.4. But again, in national environment, that is gonna shift heavily, or not so heavily, but a little bit to the right this year, with Harris expected to win by 1.2 percentage of point, 1.2%. That is actually 3.4% less than what Joe Biden did. We expect this state to be closer, but again, we expect Kamala Harris to win the state of New Hampshire by around 5 points, as you can see. And again, if Trump were to win with New Hampshire, I believe that he would heavily win the state for the right house, and again, maybe in a landslide, because New Hampshire is clearly to the left of other swing states. Again, another state we're going to rate as lean Democrat is the state of Virginia. Once a Republican stronghold since the Obama years, Virginia has voted Democrat in a very solid way, voted 6.3 for Obama in 2008, then in 2012 again by around 4 points, and again in 2016 and in 2020. When you look at the map, you see that this is mainly due to the big white collar population here in the DC area, and again the black population down here in Richmond and here in Suffolk, that makes up the big rural white and Republican population here in the small rural counties. But now let's take a look at the lean Republican category. The first state we're going to put down as lean Republican is the state of Texas. The state of Texas was once a very Republican state, but now we have seen growth population in the Latino population right here in the south, and a big growth again in the urban population. Again, we know that the urban population and minorities are groups that really tend to favor Democrat. As you can see here, Latino population in the Rio Grande Valley, and in big population areas like we see Dallas and again Houston and Austin, you can see the big Democrat dots that actually represent big amount of population. Then another state that we're gonna rate as lean Republican, of course, is the state of North Carolina. The state of North Carolina has seen some speculation that Harris could actually win it. We've seen good polls for her, but I believe that fundamentally this is a state that is going to vote to the right of the other swing states. Nevertheless, it's going to be close. We project Trump to win it by just 2.54 points, which is actually very close to the tilt category. The state is trended to the left, and of course, this is mainly due to the tech triangle growth, as you can see here in the Raleigh, Durham, Chapel Hill triangle tech, with great population of college graduate, diverse population, and urban population that again tends to make up all those red smaller counties. But again, in this election cycle, it's gonna be close, but I believe that Harris is narrowly gonna lose the state unless she wins big in a national vote. Another state we're gonna put down as lean Republican, and this is a bit of a shock, is the state of Wisconsin. Many pundits actually think that in Wisconsin, Kamala Harris is lightly favored, and polls point this direction too. But actually, if you think this through, Wisconsin was really a big blue state back in the Obama years. He voted for Obama in 2008 by 13 points, and in 2012 by a whopping 7 points in a race that was nationally somewhat competitive. Then in 2016 and 2020, when Trump came over, really the state of the race here in the Rust Belt region dramatically changed, with Wisconsin that was barely taken by Trump in 2016 and then barely won by Biden in 2020, in both occasions by a margin closer than 1 point. This is really because of the inroads and the Republicans and Trump were able to make into the rural, white, blue-collar population here in Wisconsin and also in the Rust Belt. Trump's message resonates well with non-educated, white, and a little bit old people that really makes up the demographic of Wisconsin. For this reason, really, I do think that Wisconsin will vote to the right of the nation, will continue its trend to the right of the nation, in particular in a national environment where the nation shifts around 3 points to the right. So again, if you really take a look here at the 2012 presidential map, you see that Wisconsin, with its rural counties, was really a blue state. All right, all those blue dots are actually small, rural, white counties that were voting for Democrats. Then Trump came along, and really what happened was that he made such big inroads with socially conservative, blue-collar workers in rural counties, and you see that Wisconsin turned completely red. Alright, and not even Joe Biden actually couldn't shift this paradigm, alright? If you look at Wisconsin, really, you can see that really few counties actually swapped from 2016 to 2020, not as many as those who really changed route from 2012 to 2016. Actually, Biden was really able to turn out his voters here down in Dane County, home to Madison, and really in Milwaukee County, but really the voting patterns did not change. Democrats used to have a big advantage here in Wisconsin with blue collar workers, with auto industry workers, which was which were unions, all right, unions, workers, and unions had really much clout when it came to election, favoring, of course, Democrats. Then in 2011, the governor of Wisconsin, Republican Scott Walker, passed Act 10, and it dramatically weakened the clout and the importance of unions that now cannot sway election as much as they did in the past. For example, in Bush-Gore years, when actually Al Gore narrowly won Wisconsin, both when in 2000 and when Democrat candidate Kerry won it in 2024. So really, there is no such thing that points to this state actually favoring in any way Democrat. The only thing that really Kamala Harris could play up here is the issue of abortion. This is not a very religious state, not as religious as the southern states, for example, like North Carolina, Georgia, and Arizona. This is generally a pro-choice state, and in 2023, it voted for a very liberal Supreme Court justice, and on a campaign that was really played on issue of abortion. But on the other hand, there has been some studies that actually show that the correlation between the 2022 midterms, where Republican fared worse than expectation, was not really that much to ascribe to the issue of abortion. Of course, there's been some correlation, but we should take it with a pinch of salt. And also, as I can understand from the campaign, the Democratic campaign is not playing the issue of abortion up as much as I thought they would, and in a way that could be decisive and could actually shift and stop and reverse the right-leaning trend of this state. This is a very fundamentally red state, as you can see here from the fundamental score. Down here, Wisconsin is a 2.05 positive Republican fundamental score state. Of course, when you can see right here, plus is Republican leaning and minus is Democrat leaning. But the really important thing is Wisconsin is fundamentally red, it's shifting red. There is no reason to think that with the nation shifting to the right and Trump message resonating with blue collar workers and with the state of economy faring bad according to many voters, Kamala Harris should have a big advantage here. And even when you look at polls, beware that Wisconsin was one of the states in 2016 and 2020 where the polling hours was the biggest in the nation. So according to all those factors, I expect that the conservative movement here in Wisconsin will actually have the upper hand, and Trump will win Wisconsin in 2024, even though the race should shift further to the left on a nationwide level from now to November. It would take a kind of relatively big shift for Kamala Harris to win Wisconsin, and definitely I think that if Harris wins Wisconsin, then she's going to sweep all those other states. Maybe the only state that really can race with Wisconsin to which is of those 7 battleground states, the further state to the right is North Carolina. But right now we expect Trump to win the state of Wisconsin by 4.15 points, as you can see right here, which means that Wisconsin would be the most right-leaning state among those 7 battleground states. So we're here with Kamala Harris having 226 electoral votes and Donald Trump 245, with just 25 short of the magic number 270, and we're here with just 5 states that we are still left to rate, and we're gonna put down as tilt either in favor of Kamala Harris or in favor of Donald Trump. Again, in those states, the race is really close, and the projected margin is less than 2 points with an associated probability of less than 60%. So this means that this is a statistical tie, and that really minor changes, like, for example, bad weather, may really influence and affect the election in a very important way. So let's now start here in the upper Midwest region. The state of Michigan and the state of Pennsylvania will both go down as tilt Republican. Those were really Democrat strongholds in the past, and President Barack Obama carried them all in 2008 and in 2020. In 2008, Michigan was won by a whopping 16.5 margin. In 2020, in 2012, again, he carried all those Rust Belt states. Pennsylvania by 5.4 margin. Again, Pennsylvania was really the least Democrat state here in the region. But again, those states trended heavily to the right in 2016 and in 2020, with Trump making big inroads in auto workers industry workers, factory workers, and again, blue collar workers here in Wisconsin, central Michigan, in Appalachia, and western Pennsylvania. Those things really changed the race, and again, in 2020, we didn't really see a big change in voting trends. We just see Biden carried those states really narrowly, despite winning the popular vote by 4.6 margin, which was a 2.6 shift to the left of the to the left in national environment from 2016. Again, voting patterns did not change. The fact was that those state right-wing trend was stopped by the nation trending to the left in 2020. But we may expect this trend to continue to the right once the nation, like in 2024, is projected to shift to the right on a national level, nationwide. So again, taking a look at the map here in 2012, we see how Michigan was really blue in 2012. Many blue dots here. In 2016, you see Trump comes over and the state is red. Again, in 2020, the state keeps showing really red dots here. The fact is that Biden wasn't really able to win over many rural white voters. He just ran up his margins here in Wayne counties, in urban diverse counties. The question will be whether Harris will be able to do the same if those rural voters that may be energized by Trump's message, by the economy faring bad according to them, will actually offset those votes here in favor of Harris. One caveat for Democrats is that after October the 7th attack on Israel and the Israel response and the war in Gaza, Democrats have seen some kind of backlash from the American Palestinian community, Muslim community that is really popular here in Wayne County and in Detroit region. Again, this may be seen right here in the 2024 primary back in February, when 100,000 Democrats voted uncommitted to protest against Joe Biden's handling of the war. If those voters, or just a fraction of those voters, were to see out the election or were to vote, for example, for other left-leaning candidate like Green Party candidate Jill Stein, this would be a really hard nut to crack for Kamala Harris. Vice President Harris has seemed to be more receptive to the issue of Gaza war, but her policies on the matter did not really differ that much from Joe Biden's. And of course, this may play into Michigan's really close race. Again, if you look at the margin, the race both in Michigan and Pennsylvania is really close. The model gives Michigan a projected margin of Trump plus 0.77, with Trump associated probability of winning at 56.1, while in Pennsylvania the margin is a little bit bigger at 1.10, with Trump having a 59 probability of winning. The race in Pennsylvania will go down to the simple question, if you look at the map, of whether Kamala Harris will be able, with some votes here in the big blue, urban, educated and diverse Philadelphia County, Delaware counties, Scranton region, Bucks County, Montgomery County, Chester County, will be able to offset those rural votes here and white votes here. Another thing to look will be the suburbs here, for example. Trump suffered with suburbs in 2020, and voters tend to reject his policy, his braggadocio, for example, even after January the 6th attack. But with the state of the economy and the nation faring very bad according to many voters, Trump may play up that and actually may make some inroads into that electorate and trying to offset those really votes here. Again, we do not expect Pennsylvania voting patterns to change. From 2016 to 2020, the only county that swapped in Pennsylvania was Erie County, with Biden winning it by 49.8%. So we do not expect voting patterns to change. The question will be about which candidate is going to energize, is going to turn out their base, and is going to really run up the margins. Again, if you look at the polls, in Pennsylvania we have that polls tend to favor Harris by 1.1%, but again you need to factor in polling error and fundamentals, and so this gives us our 1.1 margin, projected margin in favor of Trump. In Pennsylvania, polling error was not so disastrous in 2020 and in 2016. In 2020, we had Pennsylvania with a polling average on November the 2nd, the day before election day in 2020, at 4.7, while on the other hand, Pennsylvania was won by Biden by 1.2%. So here we have a 3.5 polling error, which is nothing comparable to the polling error in Wisconsin and in Michigan. So don't be fooled if you see, for example, in Michigan or in Wisconsin, polls showing Harris leading by a commanding lead. For example, in the state of Wisconsin here, Harris is leading by 3.2%. So you may think she's going to win Wisconsin. But if you look at 2020, Wisconsin has a history, and also in 2016, Wisconsin has a history, as well as Michigan, of underestimating Donald Trump. In 2020, for example, on November the 2nd, on November the 3rd, Biden was leading by 8.4%, but actually he ended up winning by 0.6%. This was a really huge polling error of 7.8% error, underestimating Donald Trump. And with Michigan, it's the same thing really, because in 2020, President Donald Trump was actually behind President Biden by a whopping 7.9 margin on November the 3rd, but ultimately Joe Biden only won Michigan by 2.8% margin, so this was a really 5.1 polling error. So when you see, for example, in Michigan, again, that's the polling error, the polls give Harris the upper end at 2.1, please beware of these caveats. It's really important to take into account, and again, this is factored in by the model, and so we project those states to vote tilt Republican. And in this way, taking just the Rust Belt region, we can see that Donald Trump is just past the magic number at 269. Indeed, if Trump is able to carry the state of North Carolina and those Rust Belt states, he is the president of the United States. Those states are really critical. Had Trump won them in 2020, he would have become president. Had Clinton won them in 2016, she would have become president in 2016. Those states trying to vote together had voted together since 1988. According to the model, they will do so in 2024, but remember, those two states are really close. But the important thing is if Trump wins Michigan and Pennsylvania, wins Wisconsin and carries North Carolina, he can even lose here in those three Sun Belt states and still win the election. Starting off with the state of Nevada, this was a really Democrat state, again in the Obama era and again in a Clinton and Biden election. He voted Democrat by, again, not such big margins, but again, Democrats have really generally managed to eat that out, in particular because of the big Latino population here. But again, with the shift that we've seen in recent months, Latino really getting to vote more for Republicans, and considering the fact that Nevada is really one of the least educated states, and considering how the education gap is impacting the election, with more educated voters tending to vote for Democrats and less educated voters becoming more and more Republicans with the Trump era, we expect those states to trend Republican. Again, if you look at the 2020 election, actually, Biden carried it by 2.4 points and Clinton in 2016 carried it by exactly the same margin. But if you look at the national votes, the nation actually shifted Democrats from 2016 to 2020 by a margin of around 2.6 points. So actually, Nevada trending to the right of the nation. We do expect this trend to continue, and we expect Nevada to vote Republican, even though by such a small margin. We're talking about 0.9 points right here. so really close, but again it goes down as still Republicans. Then the state of Arizona. Again, the state of Arizona voted for Biden in 2020 after being some of the greatest Republican strongholds in the nation. Again, it voted for Romney by big margin in 2020, in 2012. He voted for Trump in 2016 by such a big margin, again 3.5 points is a hefty margin, and Biden narrowly won Arizona by 0.31 votes. The important thing to note right here is that Arizona has seen, of course, a growing diverse population right here, in particular in the Phoenix, Maricopa County, and here in Tucson. Another important thing again is the urban population and educated population in those areas with white collar voters. Those counties are really, really growing counties, and so the state is clearly trending to the left of the nation. But again, the question is how much the nation shifting to the right will impact and will slow down the state shift to the left. Again, this is a dead heat, alright? This is a dead heat. According to the model, as you can see right now, Arizona is really expected to vote in favor of Republican candidate Donald Trump by margin of 0.34%, with a chance of winning for Trump at around 53%. Again, this is a dead heat, alright? This may come down really to some weather issues, to some really local issue, and to really a bunch of votes. Again, in 2020, Biden carried it by just 10,000 votes. So if you look at this, we're gonna place it down as still Republican, but again, this is something really of a statistical tie. In the state of Georgia, on the other hand, the state of Georgia has seen very similar trend to the state of Arizona, once a fundamentally Republican state in 2016 and in 2012, big Republican state. The last time Democrat carried Georgia was actually in 1992 with Bill Clinton carrying the state of Georgia by just less than a point margin, and then in 2020 Biden carried it by 0.24 margin, again 10,000 votes here. This is a very similar state to Arizona, and then if you can see right now, the shift is mainly due to the growing counties here and the growing suburbs here in the Atlanta region, with great suburbs expanding and being more and more Democrat and more diverse. Again, here we're going to state some regions here, some big city, for example, the state of Savannah, here, some Richmond area we here, but the main drive for Democrat turnout is here in Fulton County. Again, 380,000 votes here. Is big margins that Democrats have to run out here to really make up those loss that they withstand here with smaller counties where Trump gets really more than 60% of the votes and sometimes more than 70% of the votes. Again, the state is heavily trending to the left, and the question is the same. Will the national shift to the right be enough to stop this trade from trending to the left or not? According to our model, really, the answer is no, because we're gonna rate him down as tilt Democrat, tilt for Harris. Georgia is more black than North Carolina, and this can be seen really in the fundamental score. Georgia has a fundamental score here of Democrats minus 0.34, while North Carolina has a fundamental score of Republican 1.23. This is because, generally speaking, Georgia is more black than North Carolina, and this may even help Harris winning some black votes again in the Atlanta region. So we completed to fill out the map, and as you can see, Donald Trump is expected to win the Electoral College with 296 electoral votes to the Kamala Harris 242. Again, we have 5 states that are really close, so the race is really right now a toss-up with Trump slightly favored to win the race. Stay tuned for the next video where we're gonna unravel how the model works, and most importantly, we're gonna see how the new data that will come in after Labor Day will affect the state of the race, in particular in those 5 states. Take a look in particular at Pennsylvania, at Michigan, and at Arizona, as well as Nevada, where Harris is expected, or actually where Harris should be expected to make some gains in the next few days so that she can make up her deficit right here. Please like the video if you really liked it, and be free to leave any comment down in the section, and please subscribe if you really want to stay tuned and to be updated on the state of the race to the White House. See you next time on the Race to the White House election forecast channel.